Hi people, welcome to the Run Test. It's Kieran here, and in this video we are putting the brand new carbon racer from On Cloudboom Echo 3 up against HOKA's relatively new race-ready contender, the HOKA Rocket X2. If you're considering these two shoes, we're here to help you work out which one of these you should buy. So hit play to get our verdict on the Rocket X2 versus the On Cloudboom Echo 3. Oh, and before you tell us all in the comments, we know Tom calls it the Rocket X3 throughout. Too many numbers, too many shoe names. We'd already shot this. There's a whole load of videos going up on embargo day today, so we didn't have time to reshoot it. But please forgive us. Please forgive us. But also, you could comment and moan anyway. But anyway, on to the review. Now, first up, some quick details then. When it comes to stack height, the On Cloudboom Echo has a stack of 37mm in the heel, 28 in the forefoot for a 9mm drop. The Rocket X2 has a stack of 36mm in the heel, 31 in the forefoot and a much lower 5mm drop. When it comes to weight in our UK men's 8.5 test shoe, the Cloudboom Echo weigh in at 8.1 ounces or 230 grams. The Rocket X2 are a shade lighter at 7.8 ounces or 221 grams. On price, the Cloudboom Echo are £260 or $289.89. The Rocket X2 are significantly cheaper at £220 or $250. Now onto a shoe whip then. Well, both of these shoes are built for racing and faster efforts. The Rocket X2 has been completely overhauled. You've got a two-part Profly X midsole with a higher stack. That mixes dual density PEBA midsole foam. It puts a softer layer closer to the foot and a firmer layer that's more responsive on the bottom. Sandwiched in between those layers, you've got a spoon-shaped offset carbon fibre plate that HOKA says actually improves the rebound over its previous shoes. There's also an early stage rocker here to improve toe spring, and that's supposed to also smooth the transitions as well. Up top, you've got some very snug synthetic mesh uppers. You've got gusseted tongues. There's an internal foot cage to create a race-ready hugging fit that gives you nice locked-in feel. Flip them over, and on the outsole, you've got the familiar weight-saving zonal rubber reinforcements in those kind of high traction, high impact areas. So that's there just to boost grip and durability. Over to the Cloudboom Echo 3 then, and let's start with the midsole. This is the first shoe to feature On's new Helion Hyperfoam. It's a caster bean derived foam. Inside that midsole, there's a full carbon rocker-shaped speedboard. The midsole is narrower than the Rocket X2, so you've got a slightly smaller landing platform on this shoe. Up top, you've got a woven one-piece upper. That's got a few more breathable zones. The tongues are half gusseted, so there's a gusset just on one side. The other big difference here from the Rockets are the heel collars. These on the Ons are more padded, they're more traditional than the Rockets, kind of more minimal padded collars. They're a bit more racy. Flip the Echoes over and you've got a pretty thin but substantial covering of rubber in the forefoot here, but there's a lot less on the heels and those impact zones, but more on that later.
Fit for me in both of these shoes. I would say that in the HOKA Rocket X3, I'm an 8. I've got an 8 in both of these shoes. They both have a very similar fit for me actually. They're not particularly roomy shoes, they're race shoes, so they are a little bit lean on the feet, but I haven't had any issues with them at all. They both felt very comfortable for me over all of the runs that I've done in them, so I would definitely stay to my size in both of these shoes. I definitely wouldn't want to go smaller, and I don't think I want any extra space in these shoes, so I'd stay to my size.
Both of these shoes fit me well in my normal running shoe size, which is a 9 in the UK. They are both US 9.5s. Sometimes I'm a 10 in the US, sometimes I'm a 9.5, but either way, it tends to be a size I can always get along with. So yeah, I've been perfectly happy with them in my normal running shoe size. You've got a slightly more cramped fit on the HOKA, I would say, and it's a bit different around the heel where it's got this very flexible heel with very little structure at all, whereas the On does have a little bit of an internal heel counter. Did have some heel rubbing with the HOKA Rocket X2 that I think I've fixed with heel locking the laces. Haven't really had it since, but the On has a better fit around the heel, I'd say, a more supportive and less rubby fit. So that's one thing to look out for with the HOKA, but overall I was happy in my normal size, but I do have quite a narrow foot, and I'm sure the HOKA will be a bit of a problem for some people if you have wider feet, just because it is pretty cramped in places.
Fit for me, I ran in a UK 8.5 in both of these shoes. I think they've both got quite a tight kind of hugging race foot, particularly across the top of the foot, down into that big toe knuckle area. They can be quite tight there, so if you've got big wide feet, that may be something to consider in terms of going half a size up. You're going to have quite a compact toe box here. It's a real kind of race hugging kind of tight fit. I know some people have had issues with kind of roominess in the Rocket X2 over longer distances, half marathons and more, so that may be one thing to consider. I personally have run fine, and they were a little bit narrow maybe on my first run, but I feel like they loosened off a bit. But for me, I would recommend going true to size unless you've got a particularly wide foot, and then it might be worth looking at potentially half a size up. So onto the run test then. Well, I've run around 30 miles in both of these shoes with the same mix of paces, from slow and steady to all out. That's on a mix of terrain, plenty of road, plenty of tarmac, and a good helping of light river paths, kind of sort of compact, kind of stony groomed paths. I've run half marathons in both. I've run a marathon in the Rocket X2, and I've spent 2.5 hours in the Cloudboom Echo to see how they cope with a bit more long time on feet. I've also done a side-by-side mile with one shoe on each foot, and here's what I found when I did that. So I've just done the side-by-side mile. I've got the On Cloudboom Echo on the left foot, I've got the HOKA Rocket X2 on the right foot. Now, we've done comparisons of these with the Vaporfly 3 and other shoes on the channel. I think the distinction between these two shoes is much less pronounced. They are very similar shoes overall. I think they both hit a kind of sweet spot here where they've got a midsole, a rocker geometry and a plate that's all kind of functioning together to give you a slightly sort of firmer, snappier ride, something that kind of rolls you through your step really nicely with good energy. They're nice, they're light, they're agile, they are nimble, they feel racy on the foot, they encourage you, I think, into good form. They do run a bit firmer, and that may be a consideration for people who are thinking about whether or not you want to put them on for a full marathon, but I've done both. In these shoes, I've done those long hours and I find them fine. I do like a firmer shoe though, so if you like something that's a little bit more forgiving, then maybe you want to look somewhere else. The Vaporfly 3 are certainly a little bit softer, and you get a little bit more cushion protection from those. The one thing that I did notice here between these two shoes, the On Cloudboom Echo, there's a bit more under the ball of the foot. So I think that sort of toe spring rocker geometry thing that's going on there puts a little bit more foam under the ball of the foot. If you like that sensation, it almost engages a bit earlier, I think, than the Rocket X2, which is a little bit kind of more mellowed out in terms of that. It's a bit more kind of smooth, I think, that overall rocker. The other thing, I think there's a little bit more in the heel on the Cloudboom Echo, so there's maybe a little bit more protection towards the back. You can feel your heel engaging a little bit more if you're landing further back. There's not so much on the Rocket X2. It sort of feels a bit wobbly if you land anywhere sort of further back, and it definitely performs better when you're kind of up on the mid to forefoot, I think, in the Rocket X2. Both of these shoes, I think, really encourage you to run in your best form. I think that both of these shoes have done something really smart, which is that they have managed to sort of incorporate some of the best bits, or some of the sensations I think you've got in the early Vaporflies, into the shoes. They feel racy, they feel direct, they feel firm, they feel springy, they feel like they make you want to have a quick turnover. There's not too much kind of squishing of the foam. You're not waiting for it to come back and react. At the same time, the foam isn't, there's some energy there, but it's not kind of boingy boingy. It's not the same as something like the Alpha Fly. And I just think that creates a sensation that just gives you a little bit more ground contact. It makes you feel like you're a little bit more in control. And I really like that. I'm not sure if everyone else does, but that's a sensation that I like in a race shoe. And I think these shoes, particularly for the half marathon distance or for really kind of fast interval sessions, up tempo runs, I think these are really good. I don't think there's a huge amount to choose in terms of the overall comfort and the way that they feel on the foot either. It's a very close match here for ride, for fit, for feel, for energy. So yeah, at some point I'm gonna have to make a verdict.
So these two shoes are interesting because they're two of the newest shoes that have come out, and in many ways they're quite similar to ride. The HOKA Rocket X2 is really, really nice racing shoe. I've used it quite a few times now. I think it's a really fast shoe. I think it's the best race shoe that HOKA has ever created, and it just has a lovely amount of pop. Feels very light on the feet. It feels like there's a nice rolling action to it, and it just feels very nimble. You can really pick up the pace quickly in this shoe. I've used it for park run. It felt great for that. I've used it for intervals, and I've used it for track as well. And for all of the runs that I've done it's just felt really good. I think that probably the standout thing for me about the HOKA Rocket X2 is the midsole is softer than you probably expect from a HOKA race shoe. For me, it's not the softest foam out there, but it is definitely nicely comfortable and soft when you're out running in it. But it's got a nice bit of rebound and responsiveness to it as well. So it really delivers well at those, for me, at those shorter distance races, 5k, 10k, and up to half marathon. I really like this shoe for those sort of distances. Marathon, I think it'd be fine at for me, but I would still want to go for something a little bit more cushioned, like the Alpha Fly or the Saucony Endorphin Pro 3. But I don't think it's far off. The On Cloudboom Echo 3 is very similar in a lot of ways, actually, and I didn't think I'd ever say that about an On shoe. It's definitely the best performance shoe that On has released. It's a really, really impressive update to what has previously not have been pretty disappointing performance shoes. The On Cloudboom Echo previously, and the original Cloudboom, wasn't a big fan of those shoes. There's some massive overhauls to this shoe. It does not look like those predecessors. It looks like a completely new shoe. There's not, the Cloud Tech's very minimal in it, and the foam is different. It feels softer, it feels bouncier, it feels more responsive, it feels lighter. It's just got loads more to it, and I really like running in this. Like the HOKA Rocket X2, I think it's a shoe that really works for me up to about half marathon. I think I could do a marathon in this as well. I just probably wouldn't go for it. I just don't think it's got enough cushioning for me, but for most people it probably will have. And it's just that, yeah, they're both just really similar in the way that they're very nice, poppy, similar level of softness to them both, and they can deliver pretty much the same thing. So this is a really difficult versus to do, because I'd be really struggling to pick one of these two shoes. One of the things that I would say, actually, firstly, the upper I like on both of these shoes. I actually prefer the upper on the Cloudboom Echo 3. I just think it's a little bit more comfortable. I like the feel of that one. The HOKA Rocket X2 just was a little bit too plasticky for me, and just doesn't feel as comfortable, but there's not much in it. The other thing I'd say about the outsoles, this is a weird thing that's happening to me at the moment. I don't know what's going on, but I keep ripping off the bottoms of my performance race shoes. I don't know if it's because I'm running differently at the moment, but it's happened on the Vaporfly 3, it's happened on the HOKA Rocket X2, and it's happened on my On Cloudboom Echo 3. And it always seems to be on the outside of the back section of the outsole. Now, it could be that I've changed my running style slightly, but I do think there's a level where the rubber on the outsole of a lot of performance shoes is really getting quite thin at the moment, presumably to save weight. And I have seen other people who have tested the On Cloudboom Echo 3, there's signs of the rubber coming off as well. So I don't think it's an isolated thing. I've definitely taken it too far. This is from the first run. But I think there may be some durability issues, specifically with the On Cloudboom Echo 3, but I did have the same issue with the HOKA Rocket X3 as well. So possibly with that as well, but we'll see what happens over the next few weeks.
So Cloudboom Echo 3 and the Rocket X2 are similar in a way in that they are both carbon shoes that have brought their brands back into the game. In a sense, they, On and HOKA were well behind the pack when it came to carbon super shoes. You had things like the Carbon X3 and the Rocket X from HOKA, which were fine shoes, but they weren't super shoes. Same with the On Cloudboom Echo, which was a firmer feeling shoe, had a nice rocker, just wasn't, again, as fast as real super shoes. And a lot of that was just down to the midsole foams, and both of these do now have PIBA midsoles, and it just makes all the difference. You've got a higher stack, you've got a bouncier, more responsive foam under your foot, and it just means that they both now deliver the performance you expect from a super shoe. I'd say the HOKA is a little bit softer for me, especially around the heel, and it is a lot lower drop than the Echo 3, and it feels like a low drop shoe, the HOKA. It's so soft at the heel for me, sometimes it feels even lower than its listed drop, almost close to flat, and that's great at times. It feels very nimble and grounded and actually a little bit more stable than a lot of carbon shoes because of that. At the same time, I think I get a little bit more tip through and rocker from the Cloudboom Echo 3, which has that firmer foam, a really pronounced rocker design, that big scooped carbon plate, and it feels like it's tipping me forward a bit better and helping me tick over either on long runs or even over short races. I've done short races in both these shoes. Like I've done a 5k race in the Echo 3, I've done a park run and a 7.2k race in the HOKA Rocket X, and they were kind of all out races where you're redlining it quite early and just trying to tick over and keep pushing for as long as you can. And I think that just comes slightly more naturally to me with the Cloudboom Echo because it has got that higher drop, which suits me a little bit better as a shuffly heel striking runner. The thing I would say on the Cloudboom Echo is that this foam does feel quite dense to me, and when I'm not pushing hard, I sometimes don't really feel the plate that much. So when I am engaged and running well and hitting my straps, I get a nice sink into the foam, hit the plate and get a nice booming response. But there are times when if I'm just moving a little bit more slowly or I start to really tire and slow down a bit in races, it doesn't feel like you're getting quite as much booming propulsion from the shoe as others. The HOKA has a softer foam and it feels like it's easier to get the punch from the plate as a result. And even at slower paces, I certainly felt the punch from the plate in the HOKA. So it might be something to consider. So if you're a lighter runner, I don't know if you'll feel necessarily the bounce from the Cloudboom Echo 3 quite as much. Only other difference I've noticed between the shoes over the run test is that the HOKA's outsole is pretty good actually. It's quite thick, it's proved durable. I did a ridiculously wet track session in this shoe, running quite short reps, I think 300s, 200s, that kind of thing, and the grip really impressed me throughout. Now, I've not had any problems with grip with the Cloudboom Echo 3, but I do think it's not going to be as durable, especially around the heel as the HOKA. Got a little bit of flaking on one of the patches of rubber at the back there. Does seem to be a problem other people have noticed with the shoe as well. So that's something to look out for with the Echo 3. Durability of the outsole might not be outstanding. So a couple of really good new carbon shoes on the block this year. Both of them are probably ranked slightly below the very best available, things like the Vaporfly 3, but both certainly a big leap forward for their respective brands and shoes that I really enjoyed running fast in and I'd be happy racing in over any distance. I slightly prefer the ride feel of the Cloudboom Echo 3 myself. I like that it's got that very aggressive rocker, almost that slightly firmer feeling underfoot, and then the big booming bounce is there when you run hard, put enough impact into the foam to get that nice explosive feeling off your toes. I think the HOKA is probably a slightly more approachable shoe. I think it's a lovely shoe to pull on for actually a range of paces, and you feel the bounce in it straight away when you are running in it, but the low drop does almost flatten out for me a little bit when running hard, and I prefer the slightly more tippy forward feeling I get from the Cloudboom Echo 3. At the same time, the Rocket X is still an excellent shoe, and it is noticeably cheaper than the Cloudboom Echo 3, which has come out a little bit too strong with its RRP, it's fair to say, especially in the US where it's $290. That is a big, I think, no for me. Basically with these two brands in particular, when you are trying to lure people back to your racing shoes, having not had a top class one for a while, the HOKA's priced about par for the carbon market, and I think that's fair enough. I think it's a good shoe, you can go and pick it up and you won't be disappointed. The Cloudboom Echo 3 is a little bit too expensive, and looking at that price tag, you're not getting a jump in performance equivalent to the jump in price. So although I do slightly prefer the ride feel of the Echo 3, the Rocket X2 is probably one I'd be happier recommending to people, just because I think it's a slightly more approachable shoe and a lot cheaper. Just look out for the heel design on it a little bit. I think the heel design is certainly a little bit better on the Cloudboom Echo 3.
So my verdict on these two shoes is really, really difficult, because I think they essentially do the same thing, and I could use them both for exactly the same sort of runs that I would be going out to do, the same races. I think it really boils down to me for just the feeling of the speed on the run. And when I've been running fast in both of these shoes, they're pretty similar. I just feel like the HOKA Rocket X3 has just got a bit more pop in it. It just feels a little bit lighter on the feet. It just feels like it's really popping you forward with every step. When I did a park run in this, it felt great. It felt very similar to something like the Vaporfly for me, which I think is great. And HOKA's doing a great job at the moment with a lot of his shoes. The On Cloudboom Echo 3 isn't far off. I think it's a great shoe. I just think it lacks a little bit of liveliness that I get from the HOKA Rocket X3, but there's really, really not much in it. And I think it's basically going to boil down to how cheap you can get these shoes, and also if you're a fan of shoe designs, and more importantly, if you're a fan of On shoe designs, you've got a really good performance shoe now, which I don't think they've ever had before. So this is a big win for On fans who really want a good On race shoe. But I think I'm going to go for HOKA Rocket X3 just because I think there's a little bit more to it.
Well, my verdict in a nutshell, this is On's best carbon race shoe by far. This is also HOKA's best carbon race shoe in my opinion. And I'm a big fan of both of these shoes for racing anything up to the marathon distance. They probably lend themselves a little bit better, I think, to halves, but I also knew people who went beyond the marathon, did 55-mile Comrades Ultra in the Rocket X2. So there's an argument to say you can go further in the Rocket X2. They are a little bit more cushioned slightly. So if you've got the right conditions, but the hugging fit here, I think will have to work for you. To do that, I feel like the On Cloudboom Echo might be a little bit firm for too long hours on feet. But for me, there's not a huge amount to choose here in terms of ride and performance between these two shoes. The HOKA's marginally softer, the On's fit is a little roomier, and overall I think they're a little bit more comfortable on the foot. But it largely comes down to price when you're considering these two. And as much as I like the Echo 3, I don't think you're getting £40 odd better performance or durability. So if I'm choosing one shoe based on value, it has to be the Rocket X2. That would be the one that I would spend my money on. So there you have it. That has been our head-to-head of the Rocket X2 and the brand new Cloudboom Echo 3. Hope you found it useful. If there's anything that we missed here, hit us up in the comments below. If you think we've got it all wrong, let us know why. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe and ring that bell to hear about new vids when they land. There will be more head-to-heads featuring both of these two shoes coming soon on the channel. There may be some up already, so check those out. In the meantime, if you want to see our full Rocket X2 review, that's appearing on the channel just about now. Otherwise, as ever, it's been a real pleasure chatting carbon shoes with you. Good luck on your running out there, everyone. We hope to see you again soon on the channel. And yeah, go get it, whatever it is that you're trying to achieve.